I thought I might show you how I use Pro Retouch Plus in Action along with a programmable keypad in order to do some of the retouch that I do on our portrait work. I use Lightroom to do all of my color correction and white balance and contrast adjustment and that kind of thing. And then when I'm done doing that, usually I will export those files as PSDs, and that helps me to prepare them to run an action in batch. And so that's generally what I'll do in Lightroom. Once the files have been exported out of Lightroom, I'll have them open here in Bridge, and what I'll do next is I will run the Pro Retouch Plus action in batch on all of the images that I'm going to do retouch on. The reason why I do that is this action takes a little while for it to run, and I find I just kind of get frustrated after I'd open a file and wait for it to run, and so it's better just to go ahead and run that in batch. So I'll select all of my images. I'll go up here to Tools, Photoshop, Batch, and that opens Photoshop. And then what I'll do is I'll go down and I'll find my Totally Rad Retouch. I'll get Retouch Plus, and then Sources Bridge, and it's just going to run the action and then save it and close it. And so when I do that, it'll run the action in batch on everything. So while we're waiting for Photoshop to continue to batch our images, I thought I might show you the programmable keypad that I use for editing in Photoshop. This keypad was designed for people who like to play video games. They wanted to be able to have all of their keystrokes right at the tips of their fingers in a form that was more ergonomic. This works beautifully for editing images in Photoshop. The primary reason is because each key can be programmed to execute a keystroke or a sequence of keystrokes, keeping all of your shortcuts right at your fingertips, rather than when you're working in Photoshop with the keyboard, you're moving your hand back and forth and all over the keyboard to try and find your shortcuts and be able to execute them. And then oftentimes those shortcuts require a combination of keys to be pressed at one time, which is sometimes hard to pull off. So having all of those keystrokes right at your fingertips is great. This keypad also has a scroll wheel, which is beautiful for working in Photoshop. It enables you to change your brush size on the fly, as well as to zoom in and out of your image quickly. The keypad also enables you to have different maps for the keys. So one map can be used, have certain shortcuts that are all categorized for one specific aspect of your workflow, and then you can scroll through those maps as you're working to be able to have, oh gosh, I think as many as 70 different shortcuts that you can use. Here's an example of a map that I used to use while I was editing. The blue map was for transforming layers so I could resize things quickly. I also used it for selecting to do knockouts and that kind of thing. The second map was for when I was working in layers. I could select tools. I could navigate through my layers quickly. I could invert the mask on a layer to make it either black or white, to hide or reveal. Select my default colors. Swap colors, so I could swap my foreground and background color as I was working in the mask to either hide or reveal the effect of that layer. Changing the opacity of my brush as I was working. The green map is used for file commands so that I could flatten my image, save it as, I could crop it, do a quick black and white adjustment, and then as I was naming my file I might put a B at the end of the file name because it was a black and white, or it was a creative image, or if I was saving for web, I could write web to let myself know as I was opening images later what I was looking at. So that's how I use the keypad. So now for the fun part of actually working on the images. So over in Bridge, we have our images ready to go. They're all PSDs, which means that they've got those actions applied, and when I open it up, it'll be ready to go. So a couple things about how I've got my workspace set up, and I think it's worth mentioning. I keep all my actions on my left hand side, my history panel on my left hand side, and then I keep my layers palette on my right hand side, and then just next to it all of my tools. And the reason why I do that is because I'm right handed and it feels more natural to move to my right hand side. As you can see, the action is run, and what this is it's the Pro Retouch action with a few extra goodies added in. The first thing that you'll see is that there's a clone and heal layer, and really what that is it's just a copy of the background layer. And on that layer, that's where I'll use various tools such as the clone tool and the healing tool. And I'll do those on the bottom layer, and so anything that I do above that impacts this layer here. Next is the Pro Retouch layer, and that's used to retouch skin, specifically if there's wrinkles or any minor blemish that you want to get rid of. And that works really well to put over this clone and heal layer, because if I start working with a tool and then I do something with the Pro Retouch, it tends to smooth out the impact of what I've done there. Eye bump you use to brighten up the eyes. Yin and yang are for dodging and burning. Orangey glad is for mellowing out red. When somebody's got too much red in their skin tones, if they have rosacea or whatever. Tartar in eyes is if a person has a particular, like a blue tint or yellow tint or even a red tint in their eyes, or if they have yellow marks on their teeth. This works really well to remove that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start to work on this image so I can show you how to work with this action, as well as to demonstrate how I use the programmable keypad. I start off with my keypad in the red map, and that's the map that I use when I'm working in layers. And so I'll try to remember, if I can, to explain to you the various things that I'm doing in that. But first off, what I'll do is I'll just zoom in on my image and bring it kind of close. My system's a little bit laggy because of this recording, but it still should work. And what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to get rid of this hair. I'll press my Alt key to select on this particular layer. I'll go through and get rid of this couple flyaway hairs real quick. And once I'm done with that, I feel pretty comfortable with that. I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to use Pro Retouch just to kind of mellow out some of these skin tones up here. Right now I've got my white paintbrush selected, and my opacity is at 20 and 18. And I'm just going to paint here to just kind of mellow out that wrinkle on her forehead just a little bit and get rid of that there. Let's see how I feel about that. Let's see, it's just a minor adjustment. I'm not sure how well you guys will see these changes, but yeah. Next, what I'll do is I'll use the eye bump, and usually what I like to do is to get my brush size right about the size of their eye, and then kind of back off, and then I'll just work just above their bottom eyelid to brighten that up a little bit. I'm going to jump up 2 layers, and now I'm going to lighten things using the yang part of the yin and yang action. I'm just going to add a little bit of light underneath her eyes here. I'm going to go in and add a little bit of light on her lip there, across the bridge of her nose, brighten some things up there. I'm going to zoom in and brighten up some of the catch light here. I'm going to bring up my opacity just a little bit on that and get the bottom part of her eyelid, a little moisture to her eye here. Come over here, do the same thing in this eye. I'm going to back down on my opacity, back down to 20% for a minute. I'm going to jump down a layer and I'm going to start to darken up her eye. Give her a little bit of mascara, some eyeliner here. I think I want to draw in an eyelash right there. Just got one missing there. I don't like those, so I'm going to undo those. You can see, I've just got all of these keystrokes already programmed into my programmable keypad, and it just makes it really easy to do these adjustments quite quickly without having to move my hand around much. Change my brush size quite quickly. And go ahead and darken in her eyebrows just a little bit. Give her nose some shape. Get her cheekbones. Give her face just a little bit more form and shape. Get underneath these lips. Help them to be a little bit more pouty. And now let's do a little before and after. And all of a sudden, what looked like we were just essentially doing nothing is having a pretty dramatic impact on her there. Could give her a little bit more muscle. Just going to add a little bit more drama to my background here. Brighten some things up just a little bit. I think what I'll do is I'll add some color over here. Brighten up my colors some. Looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten my image. I'm going to let's run beer goggles. Get that. Adjust our focus a little bit. Flatten. Do some Battle Magic glasses.